founding partner, K Ventures, for a discussion with Congressman Dan Goldman.
It's a real honor to be here with Congressman Dan Goldman. Dan is the congressman for New York's 10th Congressional District, which covers Lower Manhattan and much of Brooklyn, and many of us here are his constituents. Before running for Congress for 10 years, he was Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York, where he focused on organized crime and white-collar prosecution, supervising hundreds of investigations. In 2019, before running for Congress, he served as lead counsel in the first impeachment of President Trump. The congressman has worked extensively with organizations dedicated to increasing opportunity and bolstering democracy, including Lift Communities, the American Constitution Society, the Center for the Advancement of Public Integrity at Columbia Law School, Stanford Law School, and the Jackson Institute for Global Affairs at Yale. And in Congress, he has introduced a number of bills to improve the healthcare system, including mental health, which we will talk about. Congressman, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Judd. You didn't mention the most important thing, which is that we live in the same building.
I'm about to get there. So, on that point, I have to just quickly share. Not only am I one of the congressman's constituents, we do live in the same building, and so one day I saw him in the elevator and literally elevator pitched him on coming to Lyon Forum. So I walk in the elevator, I see him, and I had like 10 seconds from the lobby to the 10th floor, which is my floor, to tell the whole story. So it was like Lyon Forum, Health Tech, Kennedy Compound. Boom, we get to 10, and by some miracle, you're here, so thank you. So we'll get to, you've been a great champion for reforming healthcare and in particular mental health. We'll get to that. But let's just start with H.R. 1. I'm not going to call it the big, beautiful bill. I know that you don't think it's beautiful. Tell us what the impact of that bill will be on people in your district and around the country.
Well, it's going to be dramatic for millions and millions of people. And since we're here talking mostly about healthcare, I'll focus on that aspect of it, which is probably going to be the most damaging. The $1 trillion cut to Medicaid is going to trickle down to the most needy and vulnerable members of our communities in our country. That along with the ACA revisions are going to, if they're not corrected before it goes into effect, will ultimately result in 17 million Americans losing health care, 1.5 million New Yorkers. That is sort of the top level impact, but there are secondary and tertiary levels of impact that are going to affect everybody, which is, first of all, the hospital system is going to be overwhelmed. Safety net hospitals rely on Medicaid. Obviously, if Medicaid is not available to more people, that means their bottom line is going to be impacted, which means they will have to reduce staff, they will have to reduce programs. Anything that is not fully essential is on the chopping block. That's going to mean care is worse for everybody. And it's also going to raise costs, oddly enough. You're trying to cut costs, but as we all know here, we talked a lot about preventative care. We've talked a lot about trying to get on the front end of healthcare where you're going to get the best results and the most bang for your buck. Well, now it's not as if people who no longer have health insurance are not going to get medical care. They're going to go to the emergency rooms, and emergency rooms are just going to be overwhelmed. So it's going to have a massive impact on our entire healthcare system in a very unfortunate way.
When you account for all that, focusing on mental health, we talked about it a little yesterday, but from your perspective, what is the overall state of mental health policy?
It's interesting. Mental health traditionally has been bipartisan. And you hear when it comes to gun safety and gun violence, right? The Republicans are always talking about mental health. That it's not the guns that shoot, it's the people who often suffer from mental health problems. That, of course, is true beyond just gun violence. It's true with homelessness, it's true with public safety and crime. And that's really, because of my background as a prosecutor, why I am especially interested in mental health treatment in conjunction with substance abuse treatment, because those two things are the root cause of so many of our society's ills and problems and difficulties. So broadly speaking, I guess conceptually, there's bipartisan support. Nowadays, Republicans don't want to spend any money. And it's really short-sighted because we are going to spend money. And it would make a lot more sense to spend money effectively and efficiently than to just try to slash and burn, as DOJ did, as this bill does. And we've talked a lot about, I know Patrick in particular is rightly focused on parity between physical health care and mental health care. One of the things I focus a lot on is equity. If you have enough money, you can get mental health care. You can pay for a therapist or a psychiatrist or long-term care if you need acute mental health care. If you can't afford it, you can't get it. It's very, very difficult. Medicaid is very cumbersome and very limited in terms of the mental health care reimbursement. And so the two bills that we may talk about that I've introduced are designed to increase Medicaid reimbursement and types of care that can be provided to those who can't afford it.
Can you tell us about those two bills?
Yeah, the first one was actually derived, the idea was derived from a tragic accident where a woman named Michelle Go was pushed in front of the subway in Times Square and killed by a schizophrenic individual who was not being treated and it fully admitted that he had mental health problems and had tried repeatedly to get help, but couldn't afford it. And so was just because of especially the antiquated IMD exclusion, which says that Medicaid cannot reimburse any institutions, any mental health institutions or institutions providing mental health treatment if they're for long-term acute care, if there are more than 16 beds in that institution. That does not meet the need that we have, and someone like the Marshall Simon who committed that murder might have been able to get initially acute care to help with his intellectual disabilities, and then ultimately get on a pathway to a productive and successful life. It then dovetails, so I have a bill that would increase the IMD exclusion from 16 beds to 36 beds, which also is a financial model that would allow for new mental health facilities to economically make sense to be created. It dovetails with the second bill, which is strengthening Medicaid for serious mental illness, which is more focused on providing Medicaid reimbursement for community-based, evidence-driven care, which the data has shown is the most successful. It also provides the critical wraparound service. So we don't want to institutionalize people forever. We want them to get that acute care, to get things under control, and then to be reintroduced into the community. But when you leave acute 24-hour care, there's very little of a support network that can help you integrate back into your community. And this bill would help to provide that more wraparound service to make that transition a lot easier.
So you're a great champion, clearly, for making sure there's the right resources going to these programs and the right funding. But you and I were also talking about how, as a country, our spend on healthcare is by far number one, and outcomes were like 48. I'm curious, from your perspective, just high level, how can we make policy change and innovate in ways that will make care better for people, which is the most important thing, but also take out costs that should be taken out and create more efficiency.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here for 2 days, and that's what, for me, just listening to all of you is really, really exciting. Talking to Ross about Limbic and the idea of, you want to talk about getting care to those who can't afford it, an initial AI screening with clinical expertise is pretty accessible, and that would revolutionize things. I think one of the things that we have to start rethinking is how we approach healthcare. So much of the focus is on insurance and figuring out how to navigate the insurance world to provide insurance to more people, and so that people can get the healthcare. And I think what we need to be focused on more is the actual cost of care as combined with outcomes. And it's not just a function of slashing the cost of care, but we also need to make sure that the money that we are spending is efficient. And there are lots of different ways of doing that. It's hard to make the argument to, at least for me, to Republicans to say, no, you're better off spending money up front. And I think Tom was talking about this with that 18-month window where it's unrealistic to expect to yield those direct outcomes within 18 months. That we need to incentivize longer runways where those initial dollars in preventative health care have time to work out and work themselves out and to benefit our broader communities. I look at Ozempic as a great example. It's revolutionary, and when people are losing 50 or 100 pounds, the health benefits are tremendous and on the back end, but insurance doesn't cover it. So once again, it's an equitable issue where poor people who often have worse health outcomes can't get access to a drug that in and of itself would solve for a lot of problems. So part of it is just, I think, rethinking the way that we are approaching healthcare and using more of an efficiency model than a back-end insurance model.
We have a bunch of founders here who I think it would be fair to say, they clearly care about healthcare challenges. They have real subject matter expertise, and many of them want to help their country. They want to help Americans. They even want to help the government, make Medicare and Medicaid more effective and efficient. But maybe they don't know a lot about politics, or they don't like politics. What is your advice to them on how to help?
Well, it works both ways. I'm relatively new in politics, but I probably have a decent sense of politics. But I don't know the technology. I don't know all of the opportunities that are out here. That's why this conference has been so beneficial for me. I've learned a tremendous amount. And what everyone needs to realize is, health tech is a component of health care, which is a massive policy area, but I have 100 policy areas that I have to vote on. Not all of them will I be an expert on. The fun part of the job for me is that you get to learn about every single policy area that exists under the sun, and I like that personally, but it's impossible for me to really understand the details and to really separate the wheat from the chaff in a lot of these different industries. We will hear a lot of pitches. I think one of the most important things for every industry to do is to try to figure out a way internally to identify a few specific things that would have the broadest impact in each of those industries. Now, in a free market, you're going to have lobbyists that are going to push for their specific technology or their specific company. that is, that's sort of the nature of the beast. But if there were some way that a trusted resource could distill a lot of what is some often complicated technology, it would be very helpful. When I look at AI, the opportunities I am learning about every day, even just, yesterday was eye-opening for me as to not only on the administrative back end, but now we're really talking about using this technology for the core substance that we're trying to provide to the people. How should Congress regulate this, though, is a massive question. I'm Gen X. I have colleagues who are slightly to a lot older than me. This is complicated stuff for me to understand. It is way over their head. And so one of the things that's difficult is really keeping up with the technology, but also creating a framework of guardrails that promotes growth and innovation, but protects the downside. And I think our most important role in Congress is really to do the protecting the downside, which is both in weeding out the sort of fraudulent entities, the ones that are either using the technology for nefarious purposes or just completely bamboozling people with fake technology or fake programs. But it's also really to make sure that AI is not being used for corrupt purposes, both just in the public sphere, electorally. Deepfakes are a massive problem. Watermarking would seem to make a ton of sense, but that's also a technological barrier. So we've got a lot of different things to weigh. And what I would love to do is just be able to create a foundation where, broadly speaking, we are regulating what the potential downsides are, understanding those and compensating for them, while allowing all of you to use the free market to do what you do best. And what's exciting about this and all of you is it has a win-win, which is you're not only making money, but you're helping people. And I certainly believe that when we talk about what direction does this country need to go in, and I'm jumping around a little because we have 2 minutes left, we have to get back to what makes this country unique and special. And what that is about, more than anything, it's not only exceptionalism, competence, risk-taking, but it's also that we care about each other. We care about our neighbors. We are generally looking out for one another, recognizing that our lives are better if other lives are better. If our neighborhoods are safer, everyone's life is better. If people are healthier, that benefits all of us. So it's both from a self-interested perspective, but also an empathetic perspective. And what this administration and this president do not have is any empathy. And they are trying to tear us apart and tear us down with cruelty and nastiness. And one of the messages that I really want our party to get back into is a positive, emotional message, right? This is the country of the American dream. It is very hard, much harder for many people to access the American dream than it used to be. And that's what we should be correcting for. We in government as Democrats should be trying to incentivize and more opportunity for more people. Provide access to that opportunity so that people can build, Facebook in their dorm room or, a mental health treatment through AI or whatever the newest and most creative thing, because that's what makes this country unique. I'm the beneficiary of it. My grandmother escaped anti-Semitism in Ukraine in the 1920s, came through Ellis Island, kind of like Judd's story. Her brother opened up a fruit and vegetable wholesale business and sent all of his siblings through college. That's what this is about. And on my other side, I have a distant relative who made some jeans in San Francisco in the 1850s. His name was Levi Strauss. So I get it from both sides of my family, and it's why I do this work, is to give everyone access. The reason why you see Donald Trump's message win in 2024, and then Zoran Mamdani's message win in 6 to 8 months later, is, I think, the same issue, which is people do not feel like this economy, this democracy is working for them. Too many people don't. It is working for the few, but it is not working for too many. And as a party, I believe that we should be the ones that we're not reverse engineering outcomes. We're not pitting each other against each other. We are trying to lift everybody up and give everyone access to the new American dream, which is why this country is so special.
Let's queue up a couple of questions, Jordan, if we could. I just have one more, and I think you kind of hinted at the answer with the message that you just delivered. But I'm curious. The Democratic Party is obviously at a crossroads right now. You're a rising star in the party. What is it like to be, first of all, a pro-business progressive at this moment in the Democratic Party? And more broadly, what does the party have to do to resonate again and win again?
I liken it to building a house or demoing a house. It takes a couple days to demo a house. It takes a long time to build a house. Democrats generally are trying to build things. Republicans are trying to tear them down. But the problem with building things is it's often nuanced. And what a pro-business, pro-capitalist, liberal Democrat like myself runs into problems with is the reaction to the extreme on one side is often the extreme on the other side. And presenting what a path forward is that captures American values, democratic values, but also capitalism, which is what this country is founded on, is not a sexy message to people who are disenchanted and frustrated. But we have to be able to make that case. And part of it is why I just talk about lifting everybody up and not pitting one against the other. We don't live and operate in a zero-sum game world. One person's success does not have to come on the back of somebody else. We actually can all be lifting each other up and helping each other. And one of the problems with the Democratic Party is, right now, is that what you have on the extreme left is often attacks on those who have achieved the American dream, which is ostensibly what we want everybody to do. But if you're pitting people against each other, those of you in this room who feel like you're doing good, but you're getting hammered because you're financially successful, are disillusioned with Democrats and don't recognize that, well, actually, you are exactly what we want and what we should be promoting. And so I do think that the small pivot that we need to make is talking less about tearing people down and talking much more about lifting people up. Because people like you who are successful, you don't need to be demonized. You need to be incentivized to invest more in your communities and to invest more in your neighbors. And you're good people, and if you felt like you were a part of something, a team, for example, you would be much more inclined to do that than if you are being attacked.
Let's take a couple questions.
You brought up the age-old problem of lobbyists and trying to get government individuals information, which is historically, growing up in D.C., kind of what you hear throughout all time. It's always been lobbyist, and it used to be a good thing, and now it's sort of got a bad name to it. Outside of those larger advocacy groups or lobbyists, do you have like either an example or something where there has been more of that kind of level set providing of information that, we could try to also increase or espouse?
I actually have, and I've gotten a lot of, I think, really valuable information in a lot of different industries from, folks, constituents who either reach out and I meet with, or meet through a friend of a friend. Crypto is a very good example. My district is the crypto capital of the world, the country, for sure. And because I didn't realize that when I got in, and now as I've gotten more invested in and interested in it, I find just individual, either creators or folks who've been in the industry for a long time, are really valuable resources. The trick for us is to figure out who's credible and who's not. And that's true for lobbyists too. I don't have a problem with lobbyists. Lobbyists are often industry experts, or certainly they understand how the sausage is made on the Hill. And because they bring both perspectives, they can be very valuable. I will do my own vetting and stuff, and I don't rely on whatever the lobbyist says, but it's a very valuable resource. And so the trick for us is to find credible resources in all of these different industries that we can trust, that can help to guide policy. Because all of you would have a very helpful perspective from your vantage points on how to tackle some of the biggest problems that we have. Part of it is getting the access, but another part of it is just sometimes you all taking the interest in spending your time rather than building your companies or finding the next company to invest in, but actually taking some time to try to sit down with policymakers and explain why some things are good, some things are bad. And as somebody who was a prosecutor who dealt with credibility of witnesses all the time, I personally look for people who are willing to recommend things that may be adverse to their own interests. That generally is going to be a much more credible idea than somebody who's advocating in their own interest.
Was there a question over there?
Yeah, thanks, Congressman. My name is KJ. I run a healthcare AI company called Lotus in San Francisco. So your family's new mayor there is great to us. I guess my question is kind of sort of a pivot and tangent on the last question. I've built and sold 2 companies before. My first company in healthcare, we're building a preventative care co-pilot that is powered by clinical agents, and we're doing great work in California already, helping a lot of patients. One of our fears of sort of expanding nationally and even reaching out to like folks at the FDA and others is always kind of what you said, is how much of that is sort of going to be on deaf ears, and how much of that is going to be heard. And when you look at sort of press conferences that President Trump is sort of hosting, and you have people from OpenAI or Judy from Epic, is there a sense of sort of conversation among your colleagues around how much of regulatory capture exists, so people that are trying to innovate and build sort of like the Facebook from the dorm rooms can actually do that in this space?
Yeah, and that's true across the board. I mean, Congressman Moulton was talking about the regulatory obstacles to high-speed rail. I see it in my district, especially with offshore wind as another example. Where we had putting aside Donald Trump's odd opposition to offshore wind because of the windmills off of his golf course in Scotland, which seems to have had a dramatic impact on a multi-trillion-dollar industry. It took 7 years for a Norwegian oil and gas company to win a lease to go from winning the lease to actually putting shovels in the ground onshore and boats in the ocean offshore. This is a revolutionary environmental technology, and our environmental regulations are making it prohibitive for many to invest in it. That does not make sense. And so it's certainly true in terms of trials with the FDA. You've got to do the quality control. You've got to make sure that you're, of course, doing the work properly. But Democrats cannot be the party of overregulation. We cannot be the party of government bloat. We cannot be the party of inefficiency. The problem with DOGE was not the idea of making government more efficient. It's how they went about it, which was completely haphazard, random, arbitrary, and in that particular case, capricious, because it was putting keywords in an algorithm and cutting anything that says diversity. That's not how you actually make things more efficient. But that's what we need to be promoting, is figuring out ways to streamline regulation, to promote growth and innovation, but also to be much more stringent on efficiency and not allowing government bloat to slow things down so much, so that you and the tech industry that moves very quickly does not want to go through the process because it is incredibly slow. That is something that we have to fix.
Any other questions?
Hi. Hi, I'm Robin from Avela Health. I talked yesterday, but thank you so much for chatting with us. It's so interesting. I always feel so dismayed every time I hear the statistic that we're 48th in population health, but we're first in spending. I agree with you that we need to come from a place of building versus tearing down, absolutely. I'm curious because you sit at the nexus of so many domains. Is there anything from another domain that was like a heavily regulated domain like defense, finance, et cetera, that you've seen learnings there where you can accelerate change somehow? Defense comes to mind, but like you can accelerate change somehow. I think the problem with healthcare, of course, is that it's so slow. It's so glacial and heavily regulated. You described the SMI event. I think that's a great example. And I think the spending is so short-sighted. And I think payers are very short-sighted. The average tenure in one health insurance company is 2 years. It's not long enough. So I'm just curious, are there, I guess to sum up the question, are there other learnings that we can cross-pollinate from your seat, from other heavily regulated industries that we can take away as the healthcare kind of experts, I guess, to use your word, Judd?
Yes, for sure. And what you are all doing to disrupt what is a cumbersome industry is critical. That fosters the competition with the sort of legacy institutions that have figured out a way to really take advantage of the current system. And the idea, fintech is doing the same thing in some ways in the financial industry. Certainly the technology exploration with the defense industry is really significant. A lot of, it's amazing how much of the technological advances that this country has seen have come from the Department of Defense. And that's a huge innovator that we need to make sure we're harnessing. This is why the backwards thinking of this administration, and to, not to put our friends here on the spot, but our HHS secretary that's, cutting funding for research and development, for grants to go to healthcare is so devastating, is that's the most essential money, where you're putting it into the academic institutions, the smartest people in the world, who are then creating new and innovative technologies that you all can use to expand into different areas. There's no secret sauce to any of this. I do think that one of the most important things you talk about, I guess it was this KJ, about California and being able to do some good work there, but feeling like if you go nationally, it's just going to clog you up. If you have really good data on what you're doing in California, that is very persuasive. I mean, the one thing that I always suggest is, please get me the data on why your program, why your business is effective. Because if I have a sample size, I can then really advocate for it. And I can make the case, as I do with childcare as an example, that every dollar you're putting into, government dollar you're putting into childcare, you're getting an ROI of 1.5 to 2x for the overall economy, because people are staying in their jobs, their expertise is being used, you're expanding the GDP. If I get that data from you on what's going on in California, I can make the case for it to go nationally a lot better than if it's hypothetical. And that's particularly true right now with Republicans and sort of extreme conservatives who just don't want to spend any money. But if I can make the case, look, if you spend this money, it'll yield more money, that has a chance of breaking through.
Okay, let's take one more quick one. I think we had one over here.
Thank you. Thanks, Congressman. Eamon Anderson with Acumen America. You talked about the $1 trillion disinvestment from Medicaid and from the safety net more broadly. How do you think about a policy path forward from here? Is it a repeal of the big, beautiful bill? Is it working on some of these most acute needs like SMI that you mentioned, or something that's more a radical reimagining of what healthcare might be given this sort of populist political moment that's sort of coming at us from both sides?
As with all difficult moments and disjointed moments and disappointing moments, there is the flip side, which is opportunity. Joe Biden's expression of Build Back Better is one, I think, good example of why we should not just be trying to repeal and go back to what the system was. We should be thinking about what it should be. Because once you tear down a system to this degree, there's going to be a whiplash. We're going to have to do something to repair it. So then the question is, what do we do? No, it does not make sense to just go back to the old model when we have so much technology and innovation out there and available. We should be thinking about a way of using that $1 trillion much, much more effectively, productively, and efficiently. And so that's an opportunity that, if you try to see a silver lining, if we can ever get the White House back and would be able to start to rethink how we want to do it. Because in reality, especially with Medicare and Social Security, we're going to have to address those. We're going to have to make them more efficient. And the budget will blow if we don't. And so Democrats have to be careful about not just being so reflexive in reacting to cuts that are arbitrary, but the idea of trimming and making things more efficient and workable is absolutely essential. And to do that with growth and innovation and creativity makes a hell of a lot more sense than it does just to go back to where things were 20 years ago.
Please join me in thanking Congressman Dan Goldman.
Thank you all.